Hey, what's up, everybody? It's BDF44. So I attempted to make a video in regards to the Dallas Mavericks and the Los Angeles Lakers game this evening and was pulled away. So I'm going to try to make that video again. But in short, the Lakers did lose the game, had a fourth quarter collapse of some sort. The highlights didn't really tell me the story that I needed to know. It was one of those situations where the game was like tied at one point and then they skipped up forward through the fourth quarter, and the Lakers were down by 6 next time the highlights picked up. So it was like we probably had a few fouls, didn't go our way, stuff like that. Really kept the deficit out of reach, more or less. Even though we were fairly close most of the time, and I think we only lost by like 5, but we were always a play behind or a step slow from a three-point shot that they made or something like that. So that was what I saw from the highlights. A lot of unanswered questions. Details and things of why things didn't go right, but I can tell you that what I did like was the dribble penetration that I saw from Dennis Schroeder. He was very, very, very active, hitting his shots as usual, using the pick and roll with Drummond, which really worked well with him. What I didn't like so much was the fact that we couldn't seem to keep our bigs on the floor. Now, that is not anything we have any control over. Unfortunately, we just have two bigs that, if used properly, are high usage players. Drummond's one of the highest usage players in all the league, and Trez probably should be with the type of style that he plays. So we're not able to get the most out of the guys that we have, and it's one of those things where it's like I wish I would have. That's something I'm disappointed in myself for not anticipating beforehand. I think it's particularly with Andre Drummond. He's at his best when he's just getting all the minutes in the world and getting all the attention in the world. Given the ball thrown to him like Shaq, he can give you Shaq-like numbers. He really is that dominant of a player. The problem is if he's not getting that type of usage, he doesn't do things extraordinarily well, just skills-wise, to justify not using him for what he is best at, if that makes any sense. In other words, if he's not doing what you need him to do, he's somewhat of a liability on the defensive end, particularly guarding the three-point line. And that was one of the things that hurt us down the stretch. When the game was close, they hit a big three, and it was one of those things where they were, the pass was quicker than the bodies, and Drummond was the last guy running out to the three-point line. And that's something they can exploit. That's something any and every team can exploit. When Drummond's on the floor, just shoot threes because he's not going to get out there quick enough. So that's one of those things that the Lakers are going to have to figure out a way to either overcome, or he's going to get Dwight Howard treatment in some series. He's just not going to play. So this is what happens with big men, man. As dominant as you can be in this league, and boy, these big men can still be dominant. If they're not quick enough rushing out to the three-point line, they're liabilities, and it's a real tough thing to swallow. A guy like Shaq in this era would really have trouble. He would really have trouble. I know people don't want to admit that, but Shaq would have a lot of trouble not necessarily doing what it is that Shaq does, but getting the usage that he would be used to getting. He wouldn't get the ball as much, and because he wouldn't get the ball as much, he would be exploited just like Drummond is with the three-point shooters all over the place, stretching the floor and stuff like that. It's never been more important to have players that can guard the perimeter because every team in their grandma thinks that they're the 16, 17 Warriors or something like that. So from my perspective, the Lakers are going to have to utilize their small ball lineups, even though we have these two fantastic centers on our team, which is going to kind of suck. But the Lakers are at their best, and I know nobody wants this, but when AD is playing center and LeBron James playing the 4, that is when we are having the most success. It was like that when we won the championship last year, and it's probably going to be that way this year. I love Drummond. I'm a big supporter of allowing him to be who he is. But this era, unfortunately, we're just not getting the most out of the guy, and there's nothing we can do about it. But on the other hand, boy, is he a wonderful weapon to have when you utilize him properly. And if utilized properly, he can be one hell of a weapon for us. Now, this is how we have to use him. This is how we have to use Drummond. We should probably use Drummond when AD and LeBron are not on the floor. When we have lineups on the floor with the Kuzmas and guys like that, Kuzma, KCP, those guys, Schroeder, they run great with Drummond. Pick and roll guys, beautiful. I think I think the problem that we're going to run into with Drummond and AD is AD is going to be playing the perimeter a little too much offensively. He's going to be hovering around the perimeter, shooting jumpers, not pushing his weight around. And while that's good for him, maintaining his ability to stay on the floor and stay healthy, that does nothing for drawing fouls, which is what you want your big men to do. Not a whole lot is talked about in regards to big men drawing fouls, but it really is one of the most secret attributes for having a dominant center. Is they simply draw fouls. And drawing fouls, being that you only get 6 of them a game for each player, it gets players off of the floor. So that's the beauty of having a guy like Drummond. You want him on the floor when AD and Bron are not getting that high usage energy to get the ball on the inside and do what he does and kick it out to open shooters. Traditional stuff. So this is going to be interesting to see what the Lakers do. I think if I'm being completely honest, I think the Lakers are in a spot where we still don't quite know what we have, because AD and Bron are still out. AD just came back, so you got to adjust to AD coming back. That means everybody's rotations, minutes, they're what the roles that they got settled into while those two guys are out. Remember I said about synergy? If you follow my videos, one of the things that I love to tell you guys is when a guy gets hurt, a piece on a team that's important, once you extract that piece, it's going to take a couple games that you're probably going to lose trying to adjust to those players not being there. Then you get used to not having that player, and you get better with the group that you have. Even if they're not very good, you start to see some cohesiveness with that group. That's what I'm trying to say to you. Once you bring back a player like AD, everybody slots into different spots. Now whatever you got used to has to be readjusted. Now you're adding a player of AD's caliber, so he's taking shots away from guys. He's taking usage away from guys. Guys are sitting a little more in his stead. It's a lot of stuff that has to be worked out. So that's an adjustment as well. Problem is, we're about to get adjusted to AD, and then we're going to bring in a LeBron James, and that's going to be even more of an adjustment. So the Lakers are going to probably struggle for the next week and a half trying to get these guys reacclimated into their stuff. Guys who are used to getting minutes now, your Kyle Kuzmas and THTs and KCPs, their usage comes down, and they have to adjust to that newfound lifestyle. They have to find a way to be productive without getting the highest of opportunities and things of that nature. So it's going to be very, very, very interesting to see how Vogel gets these guys to all kind of gel over the next several weeks leading into the playoffs, because it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world. It's not, because we have players that have never played with one another, and that's the reality of it. You know, Drummond ain't never played with no AD, and except for in the Olympics that one year, and now Bron ain't never played with no Drummond. So this is going to be an adjustment. Try to figure out how you can get the most out of those guys while still having those other guys be themselves. So that's what I saw. What I want to point out that I did like about this, the highlights that I saw, was just Kyle Kuzma's feel for the game offensively, passing the rock, making the extra play. He's getting extremely good at that. His basketball IQ is really, really, really starting to grow right before our very eyes. He just makes good decisions with the basketball in his hand. He's not forcing shots. He's not forcing anything. He has no problem making the extra pass. And if we can continue to see that out of our team as a whole, we're going to be just so devastating once everybody gets healthy. So I'm really happy with the growth that Kyle Kuzma has made while those two guys have been out. So yeah, that's what I want to say. And also, I think I mentioned Dennis Schroeder already in this video. I definitely did in the video that won't be released, where I only got a chance to speak for 2 minutes before having to go to work. But Dennis Schroeder is hitting his shots, running the pick and roll well with Drummond, doing his floater thing, doing everything that we want him to do offensively, scoring the ball for the Lakers. He's been a real blessing to have out there as a point guard. One of the most steady offensive point guards that I remember the Lakers ever having, honestly, since I've been watching. And I missed the Magic Johnson era, but most of the point guards that we've had have not been as efficient and consistent scoring the ball as a guy like Dennis Schroeder. So you got to give Dennis Schroeder his props. I think that's the name I mentioned. I was hoping that's what I said. I might have said Drummond instead of Schroeder, but I meant Schroeder. That is who I'm talking about. He's playing great, and we're lucky to have him. So yeah, man, that's what I want to see. It's hard to tell how Ben McLemore is doing from the highlights. I just don't know. And so I hope that I can start to see a little more, or at least to learn a little more about how he's doing on the defensive end, because I honestly have no idea. And that's a big question mark for me, because when you're bringing in a new player like that, I have no idea if he makes our team worse defensively. I have no idea if he comes in and suddenly we're not as cohesive of a team because of his defense. I'm not saying he's doing that at all. I just literally couldn't tell from the highlights that I've watched from the games that he's been in. But all in all, we've run into some defensive issues. This game was a prime example of that. We just weren't able to defend down the stretch, particularly that 3-point line, and it's going to cost us. Now, one thing that I want to say about the Lakers and every team in the league, every team. And even though the Lakers have been fairly solid in this area for the most part, we're not great, but we don't suck. But it's very important that this gets mentioned because nobody mentions it, and it's extremely, extremely important. Don't forget about the free throw line, particularly down the stretch. I don't know if anybody really thinks about how devastating missed free throws in a playoff game down the stretch actually are, until you've missed those free throws, and then everybody's screaming, make your free throws. How do you miss those free throws? Practice your free throws. Practice this, that. I've watched basketball for almost 30 years, my whole life. I'm ready to jump in front of that and say, please work on your free throws. Don't let the free throw line be the reason you don't get what's yours. And I'm saying that as broad of a statement as possible for every team in the league. Don't let your missed free throw be the reason your team loses a playoff series or a playoff game or anything like that. Focus on what's preventable, which is missed free throws. Focus on taking care of that aspect of the ball. It's so important. It doesn't get a lot of conversation. Everybody's a critic after the fact, but rarely do I hear any of the pundits ever mention, hey, don't forget about the free throw line. Pretend like you missed the biggest free throws of your life last night and practice accordingly. That's the recipe for success, in my opinion. You got to take that side of the ball seriously. You got to continue to practice it. You got to live in the moment as it pertains to the free throw. Because I have seen it more than once where you lose big games, clutch situations to miss free throws. AD has missed them, Braun has missed them, and they've cost us games. Let's get that aspect in the bag. Hit your free throws. Because playoffs are coming, and we don't want no funny business at the line. So, yeah, and look, let's not like the Lakers have been struggling with the free throw line to my knowledge. It's just something that came to my mind. I figured I'd throw it into this video. Anyway, my name is BDF44. Thank you guys for watching me, and I'm out.